Date to your potential, inspiring, educating, and empowering single members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Our hosts are Peggy Matheson, betrayal trauma recovery expert, and Sharon Collier, certified life and relationship coach.
Sharon and I have talked before multiple times about how we kind of, and I've really felt this since I'm married now, looking back and seeing how much of a fantasy world we kind of live in with this idea of finding the wonderful person, and it's going to be all this wonderful thing, and if they just look like this and just do this and we'll have this picture, and we're such an image-oriented society. Storytelling, yeah.
Yes.
And we have these amazing stories for all the movies and books, and we just we hear other people's stories, and of course they tell all the good stuff. And so when it comes to actually adjusting and being in a partnership, in a relationship, it's a little bit bigger deal than you might be thinking right now because of our frame of reference, right?
Yes. This was a big topic over the weekend. I had a party, and one of my married friends was saying she was adjusting to losing her independence.
Mm-hmm.
And it started this whole thing with married people, and they were talking about a couple where he lived in Salt Lake County and she lived in Utah County. And when they got married, he was telling his guy friends, like, I need my space. And she was telling her girlfriends that she needed her space, but they weren't telling each other. And I thought, okay, we need to talk about going from me to we.
It's a big adjustment.
And I have to give Heidi McLean the credit for the topic, because we were brainstorming for another program that we're doing together. And she said, we need to talk about going from me to we. And I went, oh, that's perfect. So thank you, Heidi.
Yeah. Well, and I've been living this, so very much.
And we're going to talk about this because you had some good things to say. Peggy and her husband have always been good communicators, and that is part of this. It's a big part of this.
Yeah, and you may not realize how much you don't communicate well until you bump up against trying to be a we, trying to work together in a partnership, and you're like, Now, I've had training on communication, so. And I think Jay probably has too through his work, through his corporate America leadership stuff that he's done. But it's still, we still have to go. Okay, we need to talk about this. And still, even it's like some of the conversations are like, oh, I don't want to have this conversation.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, this is challenging because you have to bump up against stuff for them and for you.
Yeah. But you're combining lives and hobbies and interests and individuality and
just personalities and space and the way you put things together and how you handle arguments and everything.
Yes. So should we talk about it?
Let's go into it.
Okay. First of all, I loved the definition of we from Webster. It was like being a person and having another person with you makes you a we. And I was like,
being a person.
It was like, it was so vague. It was it was almost that vague. I didn't write it down. What I did write down was the definition I really liked. An indicator of interdependence, meaning partners affect one another's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
I think that's super important. I think it's really the interdependence, because I think we live in a culture where we really idealized independence.
Yes.
But in a partnership, it is needed and necessary to be interdependent.
And notice it's not codependent.
No.
We're not enabling behavior.
Right. But that we depend on one another.
Yes. It's
that we need to put that, in our culture, I think we need to put that back into a relationship, is that, yes, we are going to be in a relationship where we depend on one another, and that is needed in order to build the strength of that relationship and build the joy in that relationship too.
Yes, for sure. So let's talk about the me first. Okay. The me that would be ready for a relationship. So an unhealthy me, let's say, might be selfish and self-centered. And they're looking for a relationship that might benefit them, maybe financially, maybe spiritually
Or socially.
Yeah, they're just looking for something that's going to benefit them. A lot of times these people might be competitive, or not trusting. This is an unhealthy person. This is an unhealthy me that's trying to put themselves out there, right?
Right.
And so they're not living a balanced life because they're looking for somebody to fill the gaps.
Right.
And this is not going to be a healthy situation. A healthy me would be somebody living a well-balanced, happy life, right? They're in charge of their own spirituality, their own job, their own well-being, their own fun and adventure, their own interests, their own self-care. They're doing all of this on their own. All of their needs are being met on their own, right?
Right. That doesn't mean that they don't experience loneliness and desires to
Right.
be
Oh,
together.
of
But
course.
yeah, but I like the way you say they're in charge of
Yes.
that in their life. They are empowered in that part of their life.
Yes.
It doesn't mean they're perfect in all of those aspects, but they know that they've got that.
Right. Right.
They've got themselves. They're self-possessed, if you will.
Yes.
They possess themselves in every aspect.
Yeah. Well, if we're covering our basic human needs ourselves, we've talked about this a million times, we're not looking for somebody else to cover that for us, right?
Right.
And it doesn't mean that we don't need somebody else, like you just said. The healthy me knows how to give and share. Maybe they're a service-oriented person, because that's how we're supposed to be. They understand that that's, the plan.
Right.
My very favorite quote is, we're all here just to help each other home.
Oh, I love that.
And I just think, healthy people understand this. They understand relationships. They have healthy relationships with other people, with their children, with their parents, with their siblings. They understand that relationships are a two-way street, more of a partnership.
Right.
And good manners. They have good listening skills. Communication, I don't know that people understand communication is talking and listening.
Right.
Sometimes you got to shut up to listen, right?
Well, you have to shut up inside your own head.
Yeah.
You have to stop thinking about what you're going to say in response to it.
Right.
And you have to let go of some of your own, maybe your own paradigm
Yes.
about the world and about what you see. I mean, my marriage relationship now is so different than the relationship I had previously.
Right.
And it's been kind of, it's still this like, oh, wow, this just paradigm shift. It's like, oh, it's just so different.
Right.
And I'm like, is this the way it's supposed to be? Because it just feels so different than what I had before. But that's a good thing because what I had before wasn't healthy. But I'm just getting used to a new kind of, I'm getting used to a healthy relationship. And I have no idea if this is what other relationships are like, but maybe I should clarify some of this, but some of it is that I feel like I'm not as focused on image and what we look like and how we appear to other people.
Yes.
And I see this guy and he's like my friend.
Yeah.
He's really my friend. And oh, by the way, we have this incredible physical connection and all this stuff too. It's just this, I just have never had all of those pieces
Right.
where I could,
Yes.
you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because before it was all kind of, I think I spent so much time trying to make it without, totally unconsciously, this image thing, which we were a great image.
Right.
My
right.
previous marriage was a great
you were
image.
like the hottie couple.
Right. And we were a power couple.
Yeah.
Seriously, in the circles that we were in and the influence that we had, absolutely. And there was absolutely substance to that. It's, but there was this underpinning piece here.
Right.
That's no longer in the we that I have now.
Right. Because you were probably a we person and he was probably a me person.
Yes,
and the focus
exactly.
of the marriage was him.
Yes.
So that is a hazard we need to look for. Okay. So when two me's get together, two unhealthy me's, two people with the me mentality, they are superficial. Like I said, they're looking for how the other person can benefit them or how the other person can make them look good, right? Mm-hmm. They're worried that their partner will outshine them. There's jealousy and competitiveness, and jealousy doesn't belong in a relationship.
No.
You know, in a healthy relationship, there's no jealousy. Okay, so moving on. They want things from their partner that they are not willing to give their partner. It's very one-sided because the selfishness, right? Because they're just not ready to be in this good relationship. Let's see. Oh, they're selfish with their things. I was watching a movie from back in like the 60s, and the woman says, I know better than to touch your things.
Huh.
Because the mentality was, you know, different. But it's like when you're selfish with your things, you know, you're not in a good partnership.
Right.
You
There's needs to have some generosity there.
Yeah. Yeah. So we don't want a relationship with two unhealthy me's. Okay. The we relationship, the two healthy me's, right? They are unquestionably a team. You can see this in their body language and their speech. They're using we, our, and us. Like, we had a really great time on our vacation. Or we had a flood in our basement.
Instead of I had a good time on my vacation.
Yeah, or on our vacation. I had a great time on our vacation. I don't know about my spouse, but, or yeah, I just had to deal with a flood in my basement, right? So they have this we, our mentality, us mentality. They see problem solving as something they both need to solve together rather than pointing blame.
Right.
You know, it's us against the problem, not us against each
other.
other. Such an important thing. They'll be more likely to brainstorm than to argue. Well, how do you think we should handle this? You know, I think this way. How do you think? Okay, well, maybe we can put our heads together and work together. Let's see. You have any other ideas?
Well, there's also, this might be just a different version of what you've already said, but there's also thinking about the other person and asking them and thinking to ask them. And I mean, that's an adjustment.
Right.
That's been an adjustment for me. It's like, you know, okay, something's going on in his mind and I need to, instead of assuming,
right,
I need to ask some questions. This goes back to the communication. It's like, so when you did this, when you're thinking of this, what, tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what your motivation is here, because this is bugging me, you know, or whatever. And just, or I could use your help, and the other person's receptive to that.
Right.
You know, and
it's all about communication. It's all about communication. And, you know, I mean, practice makes perfect. You gotta say the things, right?
Right.
You gotta say the things. You gotta clarify. You have to ask.
It's work.
You know? Yeah.
It is work.
Yeah.
So that's part of not the fairy tale.
Yeah, right.
It is work, but it's very well worth it if your hearts are together, if your hearts are in the right place, if you're not thinking in terms of just me, if you are thinking in terms of we are building something new. Like I've moved into really his world because I've got now 2 teenage girls.
Yeah. So
I've moved into a home where it was just me for 5 years. And before that, I was an empty nester for a long time.
Right.
Right. And then now there's 4 of us.
Right.
And 2 teenage girls. And I couldn't have asked for 2 more wonderful girls, by the way. But it's been an adjustment.
Yeah.
And so I've had a number of times where it's like, I'm not sure what's going on here, but I need something that I'm not getting. Right.
Right.
So I've had to really make sure I go back to like my sister. I converse with my sisters, with friends, and go, okay, what's going on? What do I need? And it's just, I just haven't had me time.
Right.
Well, and to boot, he tore his hamstring on our honeymoon. And so he's been in surgery and now he can't do a lot of things. He's trying really hard to do that. Right. And we've talked about that, you know, this is going to be a challenge, but we're up for it.
Yeah.
So I just am like I've been missing my Sundays. Like I used to spend a lot of time just pondering, journaling, writing, just kind of just, you know, just focusing on the scriptures. You know, and so yesterday I finally was like, I've taken this time. I just went out on the front porch all by myself. I I had my wind chimes going and
Yeah.
the breeze.
There
It
you
was
go.
just lovely. There were trees and, and I just journaled and I talked. I mean, I was there for like 3 hours and I was like, bam, I needed that.
Right.
And it's just so hard. It can be challenging when you're in the middle of it. And
Right.
especially, and I was talking to Jay about this. Hopefully you're okay with me sharing this stuff, but I was saying, I get really caught up in helping other people. I get really
Yes.
caught up in being other oriented, trying to run the home, trying to make sure the girls are okay and everything's going with
Right.
them.
It's mom mode.
A mom
Yeah,
mode. I'm
yeah.
in mom mode. And he was like, I don't understand that. Even though he's such a giving person. And I'm like, you're a guy. Because guys that's just not a guy thing, really.
Well, they think simpler than we do.
Yeah,
and
I
not
think-
that they're stupid, but they think simpler thoughts than we do,
Yeah.
where, we've got so much going on in our brains all the time.
Right. And
Yeah.
well, and I think too, he's had his girls the last year
Yeah.
by himself.
Yeah.
It's the first time he's been a single parent. And he's just really kind of been,
So he's going through an adjustment too. Yeah,
he's
so
like,
he's a
I don't know
little
what,
overwhelmed, yeah.
And so he's been learning a lot too. And so we've been, he's been leaning on me for the mom stuff, and I've been leaning on him for other things. And but he didn't understand. It was interesting. I'm like, even though he's very other oriented, I mean, he
Yeah,
thinks about me
right,
and he
right.
wants to make me happy, all
Right.
that stuff. But there's this piece here that
Yeah.
I struggle with, and I
Right.
think there's a lot of women who can relate to that. And I just have to be super conscious of going, I'm still me.
Yes.
I still have to take care of my stuff. I still
Yes,
have to
take
say
care of
I'm a
you.
priority.
Yes. Yes. But that, in a healthy relationship, you will have me time and he'll have him time,
Right.
And that needs to be encouraged and that needs to be fostered.
Right.
And that's the thing, because you can't lose yourself,
No, you can't.
in a relationship, because then you're not a part of it,
Yeah.
It's like you are not a part of it, you're just an empty shell of yourself going through the
Right.
motions. So you need to keep you.
So I think back to what we said at the beginning, where we're kind of in this, and I've thought about this so much from this transition for myself, about this fantasy world
Yes.
that this movie romance
Yes,
thing.
we're going to make
this-
breakfast together.
Right, and
we're gonna do
things
yeah.
people post on Facebook about, or Instagram about their relationships, and I'm like, I've just really
So
hesitated
romantic.
to do that,
Yeah.
because we do naturally just compare,
Yeah.
and I struggle with that so much in my own mind,
Right.
that I'm just trying to sort through all of that for myself, but to transition from that ideal fantasy to and I knew it,
Right.
but it's still work.
Well, and just to clarify, Peggy's been married 2 months. So
2.5 months.
2.5 months, yes. So there is this adjustment period.
And I'm going through it right now.
Our cute little kids in their 20s that get married in early 30s, they go through it a little differently than we do now, right?
I totally agree with
because
that.
they've never really been super independent. Most of them, they've gone from mom's house to missions. Maybe they spent a year in a college dorm or something, and now they're married. It's a little different than being independent and doing things on your own,
And having lived so much of life and having so much experience, you just, there's so many more owies we've been through at this point, right?
Yes.
That we have to manage our own emotional expectations as well.
Yes.
So there's just a lot of this kind
There
of
is,
adjustment
yes.
going on.
Yes.
It's not just the communication. It's not just, but it's our paradigms.
Yes.
It's like moving this, and I have to consciously do this. Okay, I'm moving my paradigm. I'm shifting here.
Yeah.
And I'm consciously doing it. I'm consciously trying to say, okay, what am I thinking, and how come this isn't feeling good to me at this moment? What do I need to
Right.
change?
Yeah.
But I also have the perspective that, I made this commitment.
Right.
I'm loyal. I've done my due diligence. I'm here with someone that I know is all in with me, because
Right.
I made sure,
Right.
I did everything I could in my power before I got married to know that that was the partnership I was getting into.
Right.
And that's been true. And there have been a few little surprises on both of our sides, and
Right.
not bad
Right.
necessarily. Some of them have been good, but it's been a real adjustment, and I just have to keep my eyes forward and go,
Right.
we're working this. It's just like when you have a project at
Yes.
work or whatever, you get into the nitty gritty of it, and there's stuff that's like, oh, this is a lot of work. And then you get to the point and you see the vision at the end of it,
Yes.
down the road, not at the
Yes.
end, because
Right.
it's all a journey. But
Right.
I think we need to realize it's a mental and psychological adjustment we have to
Right.
make, besides just the physical aspect of it. you
Right.
know.
Well, I was just thinking a lot of people think that marriage is the finish line. Oh, good. We're there. We're married now.
Right.
And that's where the fantasy comes in. It's like we have this fantasy that how it's going to be, and everything's romantic and everything's great and you're supported and everything. And it's like, yeah, oh my gosh, their shoes smell bad in my closet. I mean, there's just, this adjustment. So I've been listening. I've listened to good things too, though, because you have to focus on the good.
Oh, for
And
sure.
it's like, oh my gosh, I would not change this because he's so A, B, C, and D that
Right.
are so wonderful.
I'm so
and
grateful for all of these
yes,
things. I mean,
yes.
I think about that and I'm like, wow, I have a situation here that I've never even thought I couldn't have even imagined in some aspects of it, because it just wasn't in my purview. I just had never
Right.
had this in a relationship. And so, yeah, you do need to be grateful and regularly looking at the good things,
Yes.
because life is always going to bring challenges.
Oh, yeah.
And it's super easy to look at the glass as half full instead of
Half empty.
half empty
Yeah,
instead of the
half
glass
full.
is half full.
Yes.
So because we're all in the middle.
So should we talk about how to date to become a we couple?
Absolutely.
Okay. First thing, start using the word we more. You're a we. When you become exclusive in a relationship, when you decide, I'm going to be exclusive with this person, we're working toward marriage now.
Yeah, that's a
You
really
know,
good.
we. Because what if you just all of a sudden went, okay, all my female friends or all my male friends have just disappeared. We're working on the we, well, you've probably talked about how that has, how that's going to be. It's like, okay, now I have this, girlfriend or this boyfriend, this other person. And then it's like, okay, so a lot of our social things, a lot of the parties I was going to, the singles things are kind of going away now.
Right.
Unless you take somebody with you. So the dynamics are changing, right?
Yes.
But talk to yourselves as we.
I love that, because that's just like a mental cue.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a mental cue. Okay, we're headed a different direction
Yes.
now.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's a great tip.
You've just turned a corner, but you're doing it with somebody.
Right.
With somebody,
And
because
this
you're
is
working
still
toward this.
this is still, of course, dating.
Right.
And you're still practicing and you're still testing out the relationship and seeing if it's going to work. But this is the next step of combining the two lives together.
Yeah. Okay. Make sure the relationship is reciprocal. Okay. People are patterns. If, of course the man is doing a lot of the planning and the dates and things like that, right? Okay. Once you're exclusive, that can change. So make sure that all the efforts that the man is doing, is reciprocated by the woman.
Yes.
Make sure all the service and all the gifts and all the help with sprinklers or whatever is being reciprocated, right?
And that can show up in different ways. I mean, maybe I'm not a gift giver. I struggle with
Right,
giving
right.
gifts. But so maybe, and Jay would give me stuff all the time, and I'd be like, am I supposed to give you stuff? So we would just talk
Right,
about it.
right.
It's like, what am I comfortable with? There are different things that I can give, may not be gifts.
Right,
But I mean,
exactly.
and there may be things I am comfortable planning and other things I am not.
Right.
So this is flexible depending on your personalities and your relationship. But yes.
Yes.
the reciprocity is super important.
Yes.
And
yes.
you need to feel that.
Yes, it can't be a one-sided dating relationship, because that leads to a one-sided marriage. People don't understand.
Yeah,
You marry who you date,
Right.
and these habits are not going to change because you signed a marriage certificate and some guy said, "Say I do."
It's like, what are you getting now?
Yes.
Is this is what you're going to get later?
This is going to carry forward. So just make sure. Consistent behavior. We're watching for consistent behaviors. This establishes trust. There's a lot of people that have been divorced, that have been burned by love, that need consistent behavior to be able to trust.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of a big one, just to make sure that your behavior is consistent with who you are and their behavior is consistent, like with who they are, and that you're seeing the constant,
They're showing up.
similarities. Yes.
They're showing up the same all the
Yes,
time.
all the time. Okay, work on a project together.
That's a good idea.
Maybe a harder project, maybe not just changing a tire, and brainstorm. Maybe somebody's going to take the lead on this one because they know a little more, and the other person is going to help, establish that. But work on a project and finish a project.
It's a great idea. I know
Together.
people that have worked on home projects, or people that have worked on business projects together. Not necessarily in business together, but
Right, yeah.
things that were more business oriented, or maybe a project for the kids or something. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Right. Okay. And then we just talked about it. Communicate everything. Communicate. Just practice the communication and establish the skills. How can I approach this?
Yeah, asking
that
yourself
you're-
questions.
Yes, that isn't going to be offensive because, I have a little issue or I have a concern. How do I approach this? Let's clarify and ask permission almost to my husband used to say, you're just being critical. If you have an issue, you're just being critical. And it's no, I have an issue, because he just took it as criticism.
Right. That's not a we.
That's not a
we
we.
way to respond.
No. Okay. One of the things we need to communicate, how you want your time to be you. And
What that's going to look like.
Yes, what that's going to look like, and we're going to encourage them to be them, right? We're going to encourage them to have some quality time with themselves.
Or with doing something they love to do that's separate from you, is what you're talking about. Or with the guys, or with the girls.
They need to go golfing once a week. The golfing is their passion, and they're not going to give that up. That's fine. That's fine. You know what? I'm going to go do girl night when you're golfing. Or I'm going to go do girl day or spa day or whatever. I'm going to go do something for me. But this needs to be talked about before the marriage starts. Because like we just said, you cannot lose yourself.
Right.
For a marriage.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be small things like I'm just starting to get back in the routine of working out again. I haven't been working out, and that's such an important thing for me. And also walking with a girlfriend, which thank goodness moved in the same neighborhood, and my girlfriend and I that walk together, I get to do that. So it can be small things like that. Or what are some things that you loved to do when you were single that helped comfort you, or that were, favorite things to do?
Yeah.
And do those. Make sure that you talk about it and that you both are in agreement that that's going to be needed. I mean,
we've just given up our independence, right? But we don't have to give up all the independence. We do need to be.
It's a choice. It's a choice to be in a partnership. But that doesn't mean we don't get to choose to be with ourselves in that, to be taking care of ourselves in that.
Right. You don't want to be wanting to get away from your partner. You want to have enough time to yourself and to be you, to be okay with being with your partner.
Right. And to come back and go, oh, I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. Just to feel refreshed and renewed and willing to get back into that partnership. Okay. Something else. This is big. Get specific about what you both want from the relationship. Let's make sure that we are all on the same page.
Absolutely. We've talked about this before.
Yes, what the relationship
so
is. Yes. How much time is spent together? How much time is spent apart? Your expectations for the future. Your expectations for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Right.
I mean, you talk about all of it, but
and how you spend money.
Get very specific.
Yes.
Very specific. Practice good conflict resolution skills. Let's both be adults. Let's work this out together.
Again, those uncomfortable conversations.
Yes.
Which keep happening when you're in an intimate partnership. When you're talking about that, those things keep coming up.
Well, I think just combining houses and everything like that can be challenging.
Yeah, it's a huge deal.
Let alone just the little tiny, outer things. So, yeah. So if you can practice good conflict resolution skills when you're dating, you're that much further ahead.
Yes, for sure.
And then, of course, prioritizing time together and apart. Be consciously kind to each other.
Oh, yeah.
And kindness and niceness are different. We know this, right? Nice is being a pleasant person. Kindness is acts. They're acts of kindness. They're deliberate they're deliberate good things toward your partner. So, So be consciously kind. And you're not going to ever go wrong doing that.
Right.
And be consciously kind without keeping track.
You know, the other thing is you're saying that, I'm thinking you have to be willing to allow this person to impact your life. You
Yes.
have to be willing to be somebody a little different than maybe you were before.
Right.
In that these interactions, these connections, these being vulnerable, being, this just spending all this time together, that can change you a little bit.
Yes.
And I think the willingness to go there is important. And that's another part of being a we instead of a
Yes.
me. There's an interesting, I can't remember the name of the person who the psychologically, I don't know if it's a psychologist. It's the I-thou principle. Have you heard of this?
No.
It's similar. It's like me, we. It's the same thing. It's an I, thou. And we have to come to the point where, I am willing to choose and then put you first, that this is a thou relationship, you
Right.
and me, instead of just me.
Right.
Instead of just me. So, and it's a really, really, really important foundational thing to be able to do that in a relationship, to be willing to be influenced by the other person,
Yeah.
and become more, hopefully more of who you really are, more of who God intends you to be, which I
Right.
believe is one of the very basic purposes of marriage, is to change us.
Right. Well, it's like that goes to like the law of conformity, right? If you're with an uplifting person, you're going to be more uplifting. It just happens. If you're with just a really good, solid person who loves to serve and give, you're just going to kind of become that way because that just happens.
It's part of it, yes. And it's partly, even if the other person, and I speak about this because of my previous marriage, even if the other person isn't as kind or is more me oriented, you still are shaped from that.
Yes.
And how you respond is how you become.
Yes.
So how you respond to that. And I'm not saying you have to be, the one who gets walked all over or anything like that. But you can become more Christ-like in any relationship, which means power and compassion, both.
Right.
For yourself and for the other person. But this is the process, I believe, of marriage. This is the becoming of the gospel. And this also happens when you have, with kids too.
Right.
You allow your life and God through your life to change you.
Right.
To become a better person, to receive. I mean, there's a receptivity that needs to happen to receive the other person. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I receive.
So you're saying a marriage needs to enhance us.
Yes.
Being a couple needs to enhance us.
It needs to expand us.
Yes.
And we need to allow that to
Yes.
happen.
Yes.
And so that is part of the big work.
Right.
Of
well, because it can easily go the
partnership.
opposite way.
Right.
Where somebody's down all the time and everything and drags the other person down.
Right.
And so it's like, this is why we're careful with who we choose. This is why
yes.
we take a lot of time to figure out who we really want to be with. It doesn't matter how much you love somebody if they're, really not a great person.
Right. And I guess part of what I'm saying too is that this can hone our personal integrity, whether that person is inviting us to do things that are more true to the light we have or
Yes.
bring in some darkness.
Right.
We get to choose to be in integrity with ourselves and with God, no matter what the situation, but it will expand us in some way if we allow it to.
Right. Right. Which is a beautiful thing.
Which is why we want a we. That's part of the reason we want to be a we.
Yes. Well, that is the plan.
That's the plan.
is for us to pair off and be a we.
Right.
Even at this point in our life. And, we need to remember we put God first and then our spouse.
That's right.
And so Thank you for all your insights.
Yeah,
Thank you
for bringing this up. I think this is a great topic. I think, like I said again, we get so caught up in the romance of the whole thing. We consciously know, we unconsciously somewhere, or maybe consciously we know it's going to be work.
Yes.
But it's a beautiful work. It really is a beautiful work. And if we keep our perspective about it and are prepared, what you've said so well, Sharon, to prepare ourselves to be open, to be a we instead of just a me. And it is a process.
Yep.
So thanks for sharing. Thanks for this great time. I just love doing this with you. I hope everybody loves hearing it, but this is just fun. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll talk to you later. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you for listening. We hope what we've shared today inspires you on your dating journey. For further help, contact Sharon at lovingagaincoach.com or Peggy at peggymatheson.com. Happy dating!